So today we're going to talk about the meta on Fracture and break it all down and where the meta was and where it might be going towards. So let's just break it down, and we'll go back a couple months in time to Copenhagen, and well, we had three main comps that were being played at that tournament. We had, first of all, the Optic Comp, which is the comp that Optic brought to Masters Reykjavik, had a ton of success with, and then a lot of people a lot of teams started to copy that comp. And the main family of this comp is with the KO, but you can see that there are some variations. DRX, for instance, play the Fade, and there were some teams that went with the Double Duelist instead with the Raze, but they end up playing, quite similar overall, and we'll dive into that a bit. The Sage comp is obviously bringing in the Sage instead and going for a Raze instead of a Neon. And then the final comp, which was only run by FPX at Copenhagen, but it did inspire, quite a few other teams to try out this kind of thing on Fracture, so I thought I'd include it, even though they were the only team playing it at Copenhagen. They obviously won that tournament and had a ton of success with this comp as well, which is quite different indeed. You're bringing in the Viper, you're not playing Breach, you're bringing in Omen instead of Brim. It does play out quite differently, and we'll break down the differences between these three comps now. So let's start with the Optic comp, where we're running that So let's start with the Optic Comp, and the first thing you need to know about the Optic Comp is it is incredibly fast, and this is a game from Boom versus Optic on Fracture, where both teams are running the exact same comp, and the whole game is just incredibly fast-paced. It's a lot of just, 5-man execs, or things like this, where it's like a pinch here on A main, as you will see. So Boom go for this knife in towards A main. They see that, there's quite a few people there, and so these guys just start sprinting down, right? In come the smokes, and they are just going to sprint down and get right behind them straight away, and then the fight is going to start taking place as it goes back and forth with kills coming in for either side. You see we're getting kills either way. The chamber TP'd out actually for Boom there, and they managed to get the kills, and this is a very, very common thing for this comp to do. Extremely fast-paced, and then you're going to see even Marved and Crashies here, they continue the pace, right, as they go for a super fast retake. They try and get in there as fast as they can. Eventually, obviously, you see that Boom do manage to win the round, but that is basically how this comp plays out across the map, right? It's a lot of grouping up as a big stack and just sending it down a certain direction, or things like this, where it's a pinch perhaps on A main, where you come from Dish and you pinch on this area here. That's basically how this comp plays out, extremely fast. The defensive side of this comp, we didn't see it in this round, but in general, another thing this comp likes to do on the defensive side is get aggressive as well, go for these north and south side pinches like that, send a ton of util down there and just kind of explode out of the defensive side and take that space and take those fights. Moving on over to the Sage comp, and as you might expect with a Sage, we actually have a game here, Crew versus Lad, where both teams are running the Sage comp here in a mirror. Obviously, it's going to be a bit slower overall. It's not going to be full of, exec, just exec all the time, right? It is a bit more slow paced. It is a bit more controlled in how it likes to go. And you end up with situations like this, where in this instance, Crew have decided to wall off Dish here. Other common walls on the defensive side will be here in A main, or down here towards Arcade as well, just to block off those avenues. Some very common things. And obviously the Sage is just about giving you a bit more defensive control overall, as you would expect. And on the attacking side, what you're going to see Loud do here is a very common wall indeed that they're going to come across, and they're going to slowly work their way through, right? It's not quite as bursty, it's not quite as fast paced as you might expect. They're going to put a wall across the site here overall that just makes it a bit easier to drop. You might get a common exec with this comp would be, you are going to send the majority of your players towards drop. You put this wall down as a Sage, you come in behind it, you take all this space from the site, and you basically cut off any defenders, and if there is someone on site, obviously they become in a lot of trouble. This is like a normal way to play this comp, and it has found some success in the past. But then really the out of left field comp was FPX. When they first started running this comp, that isn't running a Breach, right? That was kind of unheard of at the time. And they're running Omen as well, which was kind of unheard of at the time. It was really out there, out in left field, but they found a lot of success with it, particularly against the Optic comps. They seem to just absolutely destroy anyone who plays that comp anytime they play here on Fracture. And obviously on the attacking side, again, as you would expect, this is going to be a little slower overall. It's going to be, working your way up through the map. Generally what what they like to do is put down this Viper wall just across here that obviously allows you to either cross through the underpass and gives you control of that underpass, and also gets you know, some blockage of sight there as well when you come in onto the site. They have actually missed the Viper orb, but normally they put their Viper orb down in here as well, which, you know, just cuts off the vision from anyone deeper here in A main. It means you have to open the door to be able to see what's going on, and obviously you can hear the door if it opens, and so you know that it will be a threat or not. And then yeah, they're just going to work their way slowly up through the map like they're going to do here. You know, they're going to go for a split push instead. Now, this is not to say that they don't ever go for these big pushes. In fact, we're going to see something quite funny here where Angel's going to TP behind Mako. Quite a little funny thing, but right, you know, they clear out that one area, right, and then you're going to see there's a bit of patience here, and Angel flashes down there. Actually, Stacks hits a really nice shot, but now they're coming in on the pinch, and, you know, it's coming from two directions. Xiao's able to get that kill on the Neon just there, and eventually, you know, they're just going to wait for Stacks and eventually pinch on him, force him to push out. Zipan's waiting for it. They get onto the site. They're going to win this round. But yeah, this is not to say that they don't ever go for fast pushes. They can do, particularly towards the south side of the map and coming down, coming either up through the staircase or through A main. They do, you know, these pushes, you know, fairly commonly, but they can also add some of those split pushes and be more kind of passive and wait for those pushes as well from the defending side. They're quite good at dealing with them as well. But it's on the defensive side that I think this comp really shines, and it's really what this comp, I think, was designed to do. Obviously, with the addition of a Viper, you have, you know, some more potential to stall and delay. Like you can see here, they've got the Viper set up here down on B, where you get the Viper wall across here, again, potentially giving you some control of that, making it more difficult to come in onto the site. And then even a little pocket for, you know, someone on the site to play behind. They got the Viper orb here to stop on the staircase, which you can throw your mollies down in there as well. But the crucial thing is towards A main, and I think that this is really the area that FPX with this comp were targeting when they were playing it, because they have the Omen who can put up these one-ways here in A main, and generally something else that they like to do off the back of that is they'll send out Prowlers from Xiao. You'll often see Xiao here in A main with Angel as well sometimes, where, you know, they'll send out Prowlers, they'll send out an Omen flash if they need to, right, and really heavily just stop you from coming here, and they really condition their opponents to say, you are not coming past this. Okay, that's what they really try and do. The only way you're getting past this is maybe if you know, full Neon sprint straight away just as that one way is going down, but then you have to run into Xiao, who's probably going to kill you anyway. That's what FPX like to do. And you're going to see in this round what's happening is Optic are going to send, you know, an exec towards, you know, the main part of their attack is going to come down towards Dish. But what you're going to see is these two players, they're just trapped behind this one way, right? So Optic have sent some utility to clear this space out. You see the one way gets refreshed, and so now these three players, you know, start the exec, but actually all of FPX are just focusing on them completely because they've conditioned Optic at this point to not go past that one way, right? You're staying back there and you're not getting through, and with just a brim and a chamber, right, you don't quite have the utility to really get past that one way either, so they don't feel confident in doing so. So what happens is, as this exec is starting from Optic, they just run into a ton of FPX players, right? They just run into them, basically, and they die, and Xiao gets 2 kills. And now Marv eventually comes through the door, but it's a bit too late. Xiao's able to turn the corner, and if he didn't run out of bullets, you know, he might have had a 4K in that round. But they are going to go on to win this round anyway, and it's because of that conditioning in A main and the utility that they send early on in the defensive half towards A main to say, you are not coming through here. We are going to defend this very, very heavily. Now, moving on from Copenhagen over to Champs, we did see a bit of a shift. One notable change was that quite a few teams actually, even more so, adopted the Optic Comp coming in towards Champs, but some also were bringing the FPX Comp, you know, other than FPX now. But you essentially saw the complete disappearance of the old Sage Comp. The only team that was playing Sage at Champs was Xset, with this kind of mishmash, I will say, of like a couple different comps where they're running an Omen instead of a Brim. They're running the Neon instead. If we look at the old Sage comp, you know, it's running a Raze, but instead they're running a Neon as well. And so it was kind of a bit of a mix of different comps, you might say, overall, that only Xset were bringing. And so the disappearance of Sage, you know, was perhaps a bit of a change. And you can see that in the agent pick rates as well, because you look at Sage here at the end, and there is a pretty steep decline. But you can see that there was more Omen overall, so it seems like some of those FPX ideas, you know, were being adopted by teams. But a massive change was between Raze and Neon. As I said, there were more teams bringing that Optic Comp, and you can see that really it was quite a lot of teams were bringing that Optic Comp. With an 80% pick rate for Neon, it seems like pro teams have very much agreed that Fracture is a neon map first and foremost, and Raze is kind of a secondary option if you want. And when we take a look at the comp pick rates as well, you can see that the Optic Comp is being played by 6 different teams at Champs. You know, or slight variations of, I should add in as well, like the RX, for instance, do play the Fade over the KO at Champs, but you know, the general gist of the comp is the same. And you can see that, yeah, a lot of teams seem to agree that that is the way to go. The FPX comp actually did see a slight decline. That's because FPX played a lot of games of Fracture at Copenhagen, and so, you know, it was only them. They were 23% of the games on Fracture at Copenhagen. And you can see that Sage comp, though, has basically died off. I put XSET, basically, if you include XSET's games, you know, as the continuation of the Sage comp, but it is kind of different, so it's kind of up to you how you define it, right? But essentially, the old Sage comp as it was is completely dead. Now, one thing I should bring up as well is that the Optic comp, the exact comp running the KO and the Breach and whatnot, did really badly at Champs. You know, it lost a lot of games. The DRX one with the Fade did better, and DRX had a very good Fracture overall. But the actual Optic comp, I'm pretty sure Optic were the only team that won with that comp, despite, you know, so many different teams running it. It really wasn't that successful outside of basically mirror matches exactly. Now, obviously, there is the new supposed Fracture changes coming as well, which obviously could change the meta. It's obviously too early to tell how that will change the meta overall without seeing all the changes and having played on it. But this particular part of the map, I do think Sage will be a bit more effective overall. Sage walling this off and stopping people, stopping defenders coming onto the vent at any point, I think will be a pretty effective way of trying to deal with this area as the attackers. So Sage might get a bit better overall, I think, on the map, but it's obviously too early to tell, and maybe the meta, you know, will change a lot. I wouldn't expect, you know, a ton of things to change. Obviously, we've seen the Icebox changes before, and, you know, that didn't really change the meta on Icebox at all, right? It just maybe changed, you know, very, very slight things overall. And I think, I would guess it's probably going to be the same for Fracture, where, you know, most of the agents that are already good on Fracture will stay pretty good on Fracture, and there might be 1 or 2 agents that, you know, do see a bit of an improvement, maybe like a Sage.